Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of information and distill it into the most important nuggets of knowledge for you. Today, we're diving into a book that has genuinely changed how millions, really millions of people think about personal change. Atomic Habits by James Clear.
It's a truly fascinating topic for a deep dive because it gets right to the heart of how we operate, whether we even realize it or not. Clear's work has resonated globally, hasn't it? It's become such a go-to guide for building powerful habits and, well, shedding those less helpful ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's particularly compelling, I think, is that Clear's journey to writing this book wasn't just academic. It started from something deeply personal.
Right, that injury.
Exactly, a really challenging experience. He shares this story from high school, a baseball bat right to the face.
Oh,
Yeah, leading to a medically induced coma, numerous fractures, weeks of double vision, just awful. He had to relearn basic motor skills, and he talks about feeling totally overwhelmed by the sheer scale of recovery.
it's quite a powerful origin story. And he describes that recovery not as some, dramatic breakthrough moment, but as a gradual evolution. That's his phrase. A long series of small wins and tiny breakthroughs. And that personal experience, it seems, made him realize the profound power of starting incredibly small, tiny steps.
Yeah.
And that really informed the core principles he started sharing online later, right? He began publishing articles about his own habit experiments back in, 2012?
I think so, yeah.
And his practical, science-backed insights just took off, gained a massive following, established him as an expert, and, well, ultimately led to this groundbreaking book.
So our mission today is pretty clear.
Yeah.
Let's unpack the most crucial insights from Atomic Habits for you. Maybe you've seen it everywhere, on bookshelves, online, but you're busy. You haven't had the chance to actually read it. Consider this your shortcut. We want to give you the main ideas and how they can genuinely benefit your daily life.
Okay, so at its core, Atomic Habits puts forward this really powerful idea. Small habits compound into big results. That's a radical challenge, really, to the common belief that, massive success demands massive action,
Yeah.
big leaps.
Right, the go big or go home mentality.
Exactly. Instead, Clear champions improving by just 1% every day. 1%. Even when it feels totally unnoticeable in the short term, he argues, that leads to remarkable transformation over time. It's so easy to overestimate that one big moment and just completely miss the quiet power of tiny daily improvements.
That's right. It's like compound interest, but for your personal growth. It makes so much sense when you frame it that way. But it's tricky, isn't it? Because Clear also highlights how the slow pace of this can be incredibly frustrating.
Oh, yeah.
He calls it the valley of disappointment or the plateau of latent potential. I like that phrase.
Me too.
It's that point where people expect progress to be linear, straight line up. And they often give up just before they hit the real breakthroughs, thinking, I've been doing this for weeks. Why aren't things changing faster?
Yeah. Where are my results?
Exactly. And the key, he argues, is simply to persevere, push through that plateau, keep showing up.
And this ties directly into his really critical distinction between goals and systems. This is a big one. Clear makes a compelling case that while goals are, fine for setting a direction, systems are far superior for actually making progress.
Okay, explain that a bit more. Goals versus systems.
Well, he points out a few key problems with a goals-first mentality. First, winners and losers often have the exact same goals. Think about it. Everyone wants to win the championship, right?
Sure.
So the goal itself doesn't differentiate. That's a classic case of survivorship bias. We only focus on the winners.
Okay. We ignore everyone else with the same goal who didn't make it.
Precisely. Second, goals can unintentionally restrict our happiness. I'll be happy when I achieve X, always pushing it off.
Yeah, delaying joy until the milestone. I see that.
And perhaps most critically, he argues, the results you get aren't the real problem. The systems that produce those results are. Fix the inputs, your daily processes, your habits, and the outputs. The results will naturally take care of themselves.
Okay, so systems are the answer. That makes sense. How do we actually build these effective systems then?
Right. So this is where Clear introduces his famous 4 laws of behavior change. They're built on this fundamental feedback loop of human behavior: cue, craving, response, and reward. Basically how all habits work.
Cue, craving, response, reward. Got it.
Yeah. And the 4 laws are designed to hack that loop. They are, 1, make it obvious, for good habits that is, or make it invisible for bad ones. Make the cue unmissable or impossible to see.
Okay, obvious or invisible.
2, make it attractive or unattractive for bad habits. You have to associate positive feelings with the habit, tap into that dopamine.
Make it desirable.
3, make it easy. or difficult for bad habits. Reduce the friction. Make it so effortless you almost can't not do it. We love the path of least resistance.
Okay, easy or difficult? That seems key.
And 4, make it satisfying or unsatisfying for bad habits. Ensure there's an immediate reward. Our brains love instant gratification. Repeat behaviors that feel good now.
Obvious, attractive, easy,
Yeah.
satisfying. Okay, that's a clear framework.
Exactly. And building on that first law, make it obvious, a really practical technique Clear introduces is habit stacking.
Oh, I've heard this one.
It's simple, but brilliant. It's a way to overhaul routines by attaching a new habit directly onto an existing one you already do automatically. The formula is just, after current habit, I will new habit.
Like after I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute.
Perfect example. It literally stacks the new behavior onto an established cue, the coffee making it automatic over time.
And related to both make it easy and make it obvious, you mentioned environment design.
Yes, crucial. This is all about shaping your surroundings, making good habits the default choice, the easy choice, and making bad habits difficult or, ideally, invisible. You do this without relying purely on willpower, which we know is finite.
Right, because willpower drains quickly.
Totally. And think about it. Our brain's sensory input is overwhelmingly visual. What we see is probably the biggest catalyst for our behavior.
Yes.
So a tiny change in what's around you can lead to a huge shift in your actions. It's about making the cue for that good habit a prominent part of your space.
Okay, let's pivot slightly to the bigger life lessons here. One of the most powerful takeaways for me was this core idea that tiny 1% improvements add up.
The compounding effect.
Yeah, it really challenges our sort of cultural obsession with massive, immediate changes, quick fixes. Instead, it champions the quiet, consistent power of just getting slightly better day after day, even if you don't see results today or even next month. Those small shifts truly compound over years. It's a profound shift in perspective, I think.
It really is. And connected directly to that is the emphasis on identity. It's huge in the book. It's not just about what you want to achieve, like goals. It's fundamentally about who you want to become.
Okay, so the focus shifts inward.
Exactly. Clear suggests asking yourself, does this behavior help me become the type of person I wish to be? Does this habit cast a vote for or against my desired identity? When you align your daily actions with who you aspire to be, the habits become so much stickier, more meaningful.
It's the difference between, say, just reading a book and actively being a reader. That's a powerful distinction.
It is, and it makes the habit part of who you are, not just something you do.
This also leads to another really insightful point he makes. Motivation is overrated. Environment often matters more.
That one always sparks discussion.
Yeah, we so often blame ourselves, right? Lack of willpower, lack of motivation. But Clear brilliantly demonstrates how our surroundings subtly yet powerfully nudge us towards certain behaviors, for better or worse. Creating a disciplined environment, as he calls it, is far more effective than trying to summon Herculean willpower every single day.
Right. It lessens the need for that constant self-restraint, which is exhausting. You're not fighting yourself all the time. And another point, maybe a tougher one, is his take on boredom. He says the greatest threat to long-term success isn't actually failure. It's boredom.
Ooh, interesting. Why boredom?
Well, mastery in any field requires practice. Often practicing the same fundamental things over and over, sometimes for years. As habits become automatic, they lose that initial novelty, that excitement. They become routine.
Yeah, the shine wears off.
Right. And Clear suggests the real difference between professionals and amateurs isn't talent, necessarily, but the ability to keep showing up when the work isn't exciting. To, quote, fall in love with boredom. That's a tough ask in our world, isn't it? Always seeking the next new thing.
It really is. That hits home. Okay, let's make this more concrete. Let's talk about some of those memorable examples from the book. The most famous one has got to be the British cycling team, right?
Oh, absolutely. The classic case study. In the early 2000s, British cycling was, well, pretty mediocre, to put it kindly.
Yeah, famously so. Like 1 Olympic gold medal in a century, something like that.
Exactly. But then, in 2003, Sir Dave Brailsford took over. And his whole philosophy was the aggregation of marginal gains.
Marginal gains, the 1% improvement.
Yes, making tiny 1% improvements in literally every single area you could possibly imagine. Not just the obvious stuff like training bikes or diet.
Right, they went further.
Oh, way further. They tested different massage gels for muscle recovery speed. They hired a surgeon to teach riders the optimal way to wash their hands to cut down on colds.
Seriously, hand washing.
Seriously. They figured out the perfect pillow and mattress for each athlete's best sleep. And this one I love. They painted the inside of the team truck white
White.
to spot tiny bits of dust more easily, dust that could potentially get into the bike mechanics and degrade performance by a tiny fraction. That's commitment to 1%.
Wow, that is intense. But the results?
Astonishing, jaw-dropping, really. Within 5 years, Beijing Olympics 2008, they dominated, won something like 60% of the available gold medals.
Incredible.
4 years later, London 2012, even better.
Yeah.
9 Olympic records, 7 world records. That same year, Bradley Wiggins wins the Tour de France, first Brit ever. Then Chris Froome repeats it multiple times.
So that accumulation of tiny, seemingly insignificant improvements, it led to this unprecedented decade of dominance.
Exactly. It's the ultimate proof of compounding in action.
Okay, great example. What about making habits obvious and that idea of environment?
Right. For that, Clear shares the example of the Massachusetts General Hospital cafeteria.
Ah, the cafeteria redesign.
Yes. Researchers changed the choice architecture, fancy term for how options are presented. They didn't lecture anyone about healthy eating, didn't rely on willpower. They simply added bottled water to every drink refrigerator, which previously only had soda, and they put water baskets near the food stations. Soda was still there.
But water was just as easy, just as visible.
Precisely. Equally obvious. And the
That's
outcome.
dramatic, wasn't it?
Yeah, over just 3 months, soda sales dropped by over 11%. Bottled water sales jumped up by nearly 26%. It just powerfully shows that a small, deliberate tweak in what you see changes what you do. Visual cues are huge.
Okay, and for making habits easy.
For easy, there's the cool example from Japan's railway system, the practice called pointing and calling.
Pointing and calling, what's that?
Train conductors literally point at important signals or gauges and call out their status aloud, like pointing at a signal and saying signal is green.
That sounds almost a bit silly or redundant.
It might seem that way to an outsider, but it's a safety system specifically designed to make the correct action easier by raising awareness. It forces you to consciously notice.
And does it work?
Unbelievably well. This simple physical act, this verbal confirmation, reduces errors by up to 85% and cuts accidents by 30%.
Wow, 85% fewer errors just from pointing and saying it out loud.
Yep. It highlights how adding just a small physical or verbal layer can significantly boost awareness and make it easier to perform the action correctly. A physical nudge towards accuracy.
Okay, one more law. Make it satisfying. What's a good story for that?
For satisfying, think about Wrigley chewing gum.
Wrigley? Like juicy fruit and spearmint.
Exactly. Chewing gum existed before Wrigley launched in the late 1800s, but it was apparently pretty bland. Not that enjoyable. Wrigley revolutionized things by adding flavors, spearmint, juicy fruit, making the product itself enjoyable.
Ah, so the flavor was the immediate reward.
Precisely. That simple addition of flavor provided immediate positive sensory feedback. It made people want to chew it again. The pleasure of the experience made it instantly satisfying, incredibly sticky. Turned chewing gum into a worldwide habit. It tells your brain, hey, that felt good, do it again.
Makes sense. Immediate reward reinforces the loop. Okay, let's make this a bit more personal now. Thinking about these laws, what's a habit you've struggled with? For me, it's always consistent exercise.
Yeah, wait.
That initial motivation is great, but then it just fizzles. And I wonder, is it really willpower? Or am I just making it too hard or not obvious enough or something?
That's so relatable. Exercise is a big one for many people. For me, it's often managing information.
Yeah.
I'm great at collecting articles, links, notes, but then they just pile up, unprocessed, a digital clutter graveyard. With your exercise challenge, thinking about the laws, what specific part feels like the biggest hurdle? Is it making it obvious to start or making it easy to actually do?
Honestly, it's usually just starting, getting out the door, or rolling out the mat.
Okay.
So maybe that 2-minute rule Clear talks about applies, like just put on the running shoes, that's it, or just open the workout app.
Yeah, the gateway habit, lower the barrier to entry right down to almost nothing. Make the start ridiculously easy.
Right. Okay, thinking about our listeners, what's one area where implementing a system instead of just having a goal could be really transformative?
Ooh, good question. I'd probably say personal finance. That's a big one.
How so?
Well, instead of having the goal, I want to save X amount this year, which requires active decision-making and willpower every single month. Right?
Yeah, you have to choose to save.
Instead, create a system, like setting up an automatic transfer from your checking to your savings account the day you get paid. The money moves before you even really see it or have a chance to spend it. It makes saving effortless. obvious and easy by default.
Removes the friction, removes the decision. That's smart.
It's like your future self is thanking your present self for setting up this system.
Nice. Okay, now, no book is perfect. While these principles are super applicable, are there any sort of critiques or nuances we should consider?
Definitely. It's important to acknowledge limitations. One big challenge we already touched on is that plateau of latent potential.
Right, the frustration of not seeing results quickly.
Exactly. Many people give up because those 1% improvements feel invisible for a while. The book stresses patience, but let's be real, in our instant gratification world, waiting is hard. Plus, think about bad habits. Their consequences are often delayed, like health problems down the road, but the rewards are immediate, like the taste of junk food. That makes them tough to break using just these laws sometimes.
That's a really fair point. And while Clear convincingly argues, motivation is overrated, environment matters more, it doesn't mean willpower is totally irrelevant, does it?
No, not at all. It's more about reframing it. By creating that disciplined environment, you significantly reduce the need for constant graining willpower. Clear himself notes it's easier to practice self-restraint when you don't have to use it constantly.
Makes sense. Preserve your willpower for when you truly need it.
Right. But we should also acknowledge, as the source material mentions, that these kinds of habit-tweaking strategies are probably unlikely to curb a true addiction.
Yeah, those situations often require much more significant intervention and support.
Absolutely. Another important nuance. What's a good or bad habit isn't universal. Clear actually highlights this. He says, there are no good habits or bad habits. There are only effective habits.
Effective at what?
Effective at solving problems for you, given your specific context and goals. His example.
Yeah.
A bagel with peanut butter. Might be a bad habit for someone trying to lose weight.
But a great one for someone trying to gain muscle mass.
Exactly. It always depends on your desired identity and what you're trying to achieve. Context is everything.
Okay. And finally, the book does touch briefly on genetics, right? And personality.
It does. It acknowledges that some people are naturally predisposed to certain behaviors or characteristics. Some find it easier to be consistent, others maybe struggle more. So while Atomic Habits gives you tools that work for anyone, recognizing your own natural strengths and weaknesses is also key. It helps you, as Claire puts it, find the game where the odds are in your favor. Work with your nature, not constantly fight against it.
Like that Scott Adams quote about combining skills.
Yeah, the cartoonist Scott Adams noted, sometimes you can't win by being better at one thing, but you can win by being different, by combining your unique set of maybe average skills in a novel way that creates value. Play to your strengths.
Interesting. Okay, so let's wrap this up. What does this all really mean for you listening right now? Atomic Habits, I think, fundamentally shifts our perspective away from chasing those big, elusive overnight changes and towards embracing the incredible quiet power of tiny, consistent improvements. It's not about grand gestures. It's about the compound effect.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's about making time your ally, not your enemy. And by focusing on building better systems through those 4 laws, make it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying, you can genuinely design a life where the good stuff becomes more effortless and the bad stuff becomes harder. It's a practical, integrated model for behavior change, grounded in, actual cognitive and behavioral science.
So who is this really for? I'd say this deep dive and the book itself is for anyone who feels maybe overwhelmed by all the self-improvement advice out there. Anyone who wants practical, science-backed strategies to live a more productive, more fulfilling life. Or even just someone who wants to understand why certain behaviors stick like glue and others just seem to vanish no matter how hard you try.
Definitely. And maybe as a takeaway action, we encourage you listening to reflect on just one habit this week. Just one. Maybe it's a small good habit you want to start nurturing, or a tiny bad one you want to gently let go of. And think, how can you apply just one of those 4 laws we discussed today? Just one small tweak.
Yeah, how can you make that good habit just a tiny bit more obvious, or more attractive, or easier, or more satisfying? Or conversely, for a bad habit, how can you make it a little more invisible, less attractive, harder to do, or less satisfying afterwards?
One small change.
Exactly. Remember, the hardest part often isn't failure. It's that sheer boredom of showing up day after day when the novelty wears off. But as James Q reminds us, professionals stick to the schedule even when it's not thrilling. That, he argues, is the real path to mastery. So the question for you is, what one small atomic habit will you focus on this week?
Hope you enjoyed our podcast. If you did, please give us a thumbs up, share with your friends, and hit that subscribe button. They really help us keep creating great content. And don't forget to ring the bell so you never miss an episode.